Hello, my name is Janne Kauhanen. I'm the host and sauna majori of Cybersecurity Sauna. Today's episode was recorded live on site at our Cybersecurity Sauna booth at the Sphere 22 security event in Helsinki. We had an opportunity to talk to some of the guests and speakers at the event. I'm joined here by Philip Ingram, spy-turned-journalist. Is that correct?
Well, sort of. Spymaster.
Nice.
Turned journalist. You know, I help run spies, but
well,
hey.
That's the thing, isn't it? Yeah, we like in the we not in the business. We're talking about secret agents and that stuff like that. But you're an intelligence officer, and agents are the people you work with.
Exactly. We recruit agents and get them to go and do things that we want them to do, that those organizations that they're part of wouldn't want them to do.
Exactly. And that's fitting because you're here at the Sphere 22 event talking about nation states threats. So this sounds like a topic you would be familiar with.
It is. It's something I commentate on a lot. And what an amazing event the Sphere 2022 has been. And even more amazing, we're sitting here in a sauna.
We are.
With everyone watching us outside.
Exactly.
I'll just let the listeners imagine that in their own heads.
Exactly. Cybersecurity sauna. That's it. We take it seriously. Speaking of serious things, the Ukraine conflict is obviously a lot in the headlines. One can't help feeling that, maybe my question is, should we have been more prepared for it? Maybe not militarily, but like politicians, businesses.
There's multiple layers to that question. So from a cyber perspective, I'll start with that. I think we were very prepared for it.
Yeah.
And that's why cyber has almost been a sideshow of what's going on in Ukraine.
Yeah.
From a geopolitical perspective, some countries around the world were fairly well prepared. In particular, Ukraine, because they've been fighting the Russians for the last 8 years after the first invasion in 2014.
Yeah.
And the UK and the US, the UK and US were sending arms and training the Ukrainian military for months and months and months beforehand in preparation. But I don't think anyone in the international community actually believed Vladimir Putin would be daft enough, dare I say that, to actually go beyond what he'd done beforehand, because he'd done a lot of saber rattling, he'd done a lot of mobilizing along the Ukrainian border to try and send messages in, to try and threaten, and that's what he does. A lot of it is about messaging. And then it got to a point where the secret intelligence that some countries had picked up went, actually, this is different. He's doing more. His preparations are for not just saber rattling, therefore invading. And a lot of nations didn't want to believe that.
Right, yeah. We're hearing a lot of threats about, like, for example, companies that withdrew from Russia and stopped business there. We're hearing a lot of threats that, there will be repercussions for that. And certainly the cyber dimension is one of those things. So you'd be willing to forgive the companies for not being prepared for that?
Well, I would be, because there were governments that weren't prepared for it.
Right.
I think from a cyber robustness perspective, most companies that are looking at cyber from a serious perspective are well prepared for anything that'll happen. Russia is great at saying things. They've got this doctrine called Maskirovka, which is all about masking. It's all about their approach to information operations. It's all about saying something and doing something completely different. Or denying that they've done something. They're still denying that they have invaded Ukraine, and that it is a war. It is a special military operation.
Exactly.
I don't know how they could do that,
No.
but that's well within your Russian psyche, Russian doctrine. And I think a lot of the threats that are going out, not just the companies that have pulled out of Russia, but we've also got Finland and Sweden now applying to join NATO, and Russia's been threatening them, and it's saber rattling.
It is, yeah. Okay. I want to talk about the sort of the cyber component of the war. Does this seem to you like is this what cyber war looks like?
Cyber war is a very difficult term. I don't like it. Because war has got multiple components to it. So there's the air component, the land component, the maritime component, the space component. Those are all brilliant because they're actually covered by international conventions and international laws. And then you've got the cyber component. And the operations in the cyber component are merely complementary to what's going on elsewhere. And the main focus of this war is conventional warfighting. So it's tank on tank, it's artillery exchanges, it's people shooting at each other with machine guns and rifles. Cyber will not affect that one way or other.
Yeah.
It's at a more operational or strategic level effect, trying to influence what governments can do and what potentially higher command levels can do. So the Russian Ministry of Defense and things like that. But
information collection, things like that.
Will it really affect things on the ground? Not hugely. But of course, from a military perspective on the ground, there is something that has a similar sort of effect to we think of in a cyber environment. So it's called electronic warfare.
Yeah.
And a DDoS attack in cyber is jamming in electronic warfare.
Right.
And you jam something to force your enemy to move on to another communications means, which of course you happen to be listening into, and therefore you're stealing their data.
Right.
So you can get an analogy between some things that are military capabilities anyway, that are deployed and are being used on the front line, with what we would consider from a cybersecurity perspective as your cyber activity. So I think when people talk about cyber warfare, it's an overuse of the word warfare.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you think that the sort of conventional wars we're going to be seeing from now on will always have a cyber component, more or less?
Well, I think every war has got multiple components from all of the different domains, and cyber will always be part of that.
Yeah. But at the same time, like some of the things that we've seen during peacetime, quotes, we've felt that, we've heard the rhetoric that this is a cyber war that's being waged against us. So would you be happy to say that there can be sort of cyber war without conventional war?
Again, here's where I'm being a purist from a military perspective. War is a legal definition.
Exactly. Okay.
It's a state between it's a state of conflict between two nations,
That's valid,
or more nations. Is there cyber activity that is disruptive, that is damaging, that is nation state instigated, and everything going on in peacetime? Oh, yes,
absolutely.
And that's what people refer to as the grey zone, operations in the grey zone, and operations below the threshold.
Yeah.
And that threshold is the threshold of what would be considered a declaration of war or an act of war between two different countries.
Yeah.
And every country in the world is at it virtually to try and achieve what they want to in the cyber environment below that threshold, so they're not crossing the Rubicon. And a lot of that depends on the damage that you're doing, the targets that you're looking at, and everything else. And that's in our interconnected world, it's a continuous thing. The big piece from the likes of Russia, and China are very good at this as well, is then getting into the information domain and trying to manipulate the way people are thinking by producing a lot of what Donald Trump used to love to call fake news. And information operations and the use of cyber within that, because of our interconnected world, is something that is worrying, actually.
It is, yeah. Are you worried that we're seeing sort of like, because a lot of this sort of the NATO versus the Russia juxtaposition seems very harkens to the Cold War era. So are we seeing a new polarization, a new Cold War?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think the geopolitical map of the globe has been redrawn, not just from a physical perspective, but from a mentality perspective.
Right.
With Vladimir Putin in charge of Russia, and he remains, there will be a state of Cold War between the West, and it's more than just the NATO countries and EU. Australia's involved in it and supplying equipment. There's other countries around the world. South Korea are providing armored vehicle components to be assembled in Poland to send it. So this is a global push against Vladimir Putin.
It is, yeah.
And then, of course, we've got the Chinese factor, which China is sitting there very quietly, just watching, waiting, looking at what's going on, sitting on the fence. They're not condemning Putin, but they're not supporting him. And they've got global interests, and they'll be sitting there seeing what China can exploit out of the chaos.
Yeah, hedging their bets all the while.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Okay. So, a lot of what we talk about in cybersecurity is about risk analysis and sort of what sort of threats should I prepare for. As far as it goes to nation-state threats, what should I tell my clients, the CISO of a retail company or a CISO of a software company? Do they need to worry about nation-state threats?
I think everyone needs to worry about nation-state threats, because, and whenever I give my talk, sphere, I approach it from a slightly different angle. Cybersecurity tends to look at threat vectors, and whether it is and the type of attack, whether it's a ransomware attack, a DDoS attack, whether it's through phishing, through spear phishing, through whale phishing, through whatever way, instead of looking at what it is that nation states are after.
Right.
I did a quick tour of some of the main players, looking at what their priorities are. So, for example, Vladimir Putin, its influence, its political influence, it's those information operations. It's trying to further Russian ability to disrupt political activities across the world, and in particular in the West. For Xi Jinping, it's economic advantage. Therefore, it's stealing your intellectual property so that it saves China billions of dollars in doing the research into some complex equipment, and they can just manufacture it and build it and get it out cheaper than anyone else, and therefore try and saturate the market. For Kim Jong-un from North Korea, he wants to fund his presidency and all the rest of it. So it's cryptocurrency, Bitcoin wallets, and everything else. And you can start to look at that. And then if organizations that are out there then sit down and say, right, how do I fit into any of that? And do I at any stage? And whenever they're looking at it, they have to look at their whole professional ecostructure. So it's not just the company itself, but it's their suppliers.
Exactly.
It's who they're connected to. It's if your CEO is best friends with a government minister and has got their personal contact details on their phone or anything else, could they be a target of a nation state? Yes.
Yeah.
100%. So there's a lot of detail in there in trying to work out actually whether someone is or someone isn't.
Yeah, and the sort of the targets that the nation state actors might be going after might not be the targets you think. Sort of, you're like, well, I'm just in this and that business. I'm not of interest to anybody, but you might have something that is.
Yeah, exactly. And they may be attacking you to get the details of someone else that they really want to go for.
Absolutely.
And it's gathering all of that information together. And with the advent of artificial intelligence, which is the great cry, and quantum computing, which the Chinese are getting into now, and all this, the more data that they can get in, the more they can analyze the little patterns that are in there, means that they can go into more and more depths. So you can go to people's second and third and fourth level contacts to try and build up a picture to get to your primary target. And that means that more and more and more of us are going to be potentially attacked by nation states. And again, it's not just being attacked in the cyber environment whenever you're sitting in your home base and all the rest of it. A lot of business people travel.
Yeah.
And there's certain countries you go into. If you go in with your mobile device or your laptop or something else, and you are somewhere close to that target list, as you leave that country, there will be something on there, whether it be software, and in many cases it could be hardware put into the device that nation states will use to sit there and quietly sit in the background and just sit and copy everything that you've got, and you may not know anything about it.
Well, this has been an absolutely fascinating talk. Thank you for coming to the Cybersecurity Sauna and talking with us.
My pleasure, and I think this is the first time I've ever done a podcast in a sauna. And I'd like to do it again, definitely.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
That was our show today. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for tuning in.